We are Ole Miss Rebels. As Mississippi's flagship university, we dig deeper, see farther, work harder. We pioneered human organ transplants. We helped prove Einstein's theory of gravitational waves. We are conducting life-changing research that solves the problems of today. We are Ole Miss, transforming lives and the world.
Hey, welcome to the POMcast with Stephen Willis. We're going to start in a few minutes, but I want to tell you to hit up our social sites, retweet, share, comment, like, do all of that stuff. It can only help us out and it'll make the show even better. But we're getting ready to give you a lot of good Ole Miss information, and I just thought I would tell you that because the POMcast is starting. Well, it's starting right now. Wait, no, that's a little early. It is starting right about now. All right. Good morning. Welcome to the POMcast. It is Tuesday morning. LSU week is happening. Eli Manning Appreciation Day. We got a lot of stuff to get to before we get started. I do want to tell you about Travel and Cruise World. Call them at 1-800-330-7461. Again, that is 1-800-330-7461. What I was trying to do when I set up this ad was we're 18 months into this, and everybody needs a vacation. Everybody needs Disney, the beaches, whatever they want to do. Wouldn't it be great if you had a resource in Central Florida that you could use? They can get you the same rates you can online, but you have a resource to know. It's like, hey, Disney requires masks inside. Universal does not. And things like that can help prevent a situation where your vacation gets ruined. Give them a call, 1-800-330-7461. Also, go to bookatailgate.com, bookatailgate.com. They have single games. They can do the whole season package. And with LSU coming to town this weekend, they can hook you up good. They can store your tailgating equipment for future use. They can rent you what you need. You can get a TV. You can get an extra tent if your party is bigger than you were expecting. And, of course, they can pick up your catering as well. So bookatailgate.com. Take it to the Grove, 662-701-1177. Hope everybody is doing quite well. Just to let you know, if you want to watch the show, we stream on Twitter at The Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively, Facebook, facebook.com/POMcast, and the Facebook group Positively Ole Miss. Positively Ole Miss on YouTube. Subscribe and hit the bell. It doesn't matter if you watch it on YouTube. Trust me when I tell you, you want to subscribe to YouTube because they have the best notification system. So if you want to know what we're streaming and what we're streaming about, they can absolutely tell you. We're also on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss, all one word. You can see below our podcast list. Those are the major things. That's Positively Ole Miss. Search it. And leave us a 5-star review on there. You can write whatever you want to. Just leave us a 5-star review. That'll help with the algorithm of people trying to find our show. So thank you very much for tuning in today. Before we get started, I do want to show you this. This is the field design for this weekend. They're setting it up for Eli Manning Day. Red end zones. I've always been a fan of red end zones. I wanted Ole Miss to do this ever since I was a little boy. So red end zones, maybe this will open up the Pandora's box, whatever, to where they have to do this eventually. Because I want blue Ole Miss and blue Rebels with red end zones, with just the white outline. I think that would look absolutely fantastic. But this is the field design for the game. You can see the red end zones. Manning painted in the end zone. The number 10 for the 10-yard line painted red as well, and also red in the SEC logo. So there's a lot of red showing up for Saturday. Now, I've seen a couple of questions today of what are we going to wear? What kind of uniform are we going to wear? I mean, I think it's going to be a situation, and they probably should do it, is they ask him what his favorite uniform was, and they'll wear it. And that'll benefit, him. It's his day, what's going on. But basically, it's a football game with his name in the end zone. Also, and Arch Manning is visiting that day as well. So that doesn't hurt that. So I imagine this weekend is going to be one big party. Club Red is already sold out, which is pretty great. And I imagine that tickets are starting to move pretty well for the what's the word? How do we put it? The corner sections. We'll just say corner sections, which LSU is probably not going to travel well because of what's going on. That's understandable. They're probably not going to travel well. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to sell those seats at the last moment. That's what happened in the Arkansas game. Those sections weren't sold because Arkansas didn't sell it all, and we had 2 days to sell several thousand tickets. That's the reason that went down the way it did. So there you go. And that was pretty exciting, what's going on. Today we've got we're a little bit of Know Thy Enemy, a little bit of find superlatives for Matt Corral without finding a denigrating term for the people next to Matt Corral. We'll talk about that a little bit. We have the press conference highlights, the presser highlights. We have a little bit of Ed Orgeron story time coming up. That'll be the last thing we get to, if we get to it, honestly. But this being the last week of an Ed Orgeron game, I do want to share some stories from my time in that building of Ed Orgeron. And so I just think it would be fun. So that's that. All right. First off, Know Thy Enemy, LSU. LSU is a team that for the last 18 months since their national championship with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Jordan Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Thaddeus Moss and all those guys, they've been trying to recreate that. Even so much so that they hired an offensive coordinator that fits the bill of what they were doing. It's not Joe Brady, but it's somebody from Carolina. They hired 2 coaches from Carolina to try to recreate that. Because in college football, that's what people do. And that's why people get into trouble, is everybody tries to recreate what's already going on. After Johnny Vaught, the next coaches, they tried to recreate Vaught. And I'm not talking about the coaches, I'm talking about the support staff and things like that. So if it wasn't just like that, you're automatically working at a disadvantage. And that never works. We've been mired in 50 years of mediocrity since that day because of those decisions. Make no mistake, Alabama is going to go down the same road. They have gone down this road. After the Bear, they spent 2 decades trying to recreate the Bear. They did get a national championship with Gene Stallings, but everything that was going on was with them trying to recreate what Bear Bryant did. They got Nick Saban. They got out of the vicious cycle, and they started again. But whenever Nick Saban leaves, they're going to have to deal with the same problem because they're going to try and find something that fits what Nick Saban did. They're going to try and recreate that. So LSU comes in with that style offense. Well, the last couple of weeks they moved to more of a gap scheme running the ball. Lots of counters, lots of powers. There's like a counter trap that they ran over and over and over again against Florida. And congratulations, everybody. Leonard Fournette is not the school rushing record holder. That honor belongs now to Ty Davis Price, and he did that against Florida instead of Leonard Fournette doing that against us. And that Leonard Fournette game where he just flattened Deontay Thompson. Not Deontay Thompson. Deontay Anderson. Just flattened him on the sideline. I just don't know if I'm ever going to be okay with that. But they're running the ball real power. And Ole Miss fans will be familiar with what they're doing from his time at Ole Miss. Kind of treating Ty Davis Price like Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. And the reason for this is the weapons for this team have all opted out or gotten hurt. On defense at cornerback, both of their starting cornerbacks are out. I think a pass rusher is out. I think they got Glenn Logan back, who's a 6-year senior. But it's going to be difficult. And you realize that this defensive line and everything is really going to play. Cedric Milton or Jordan Rhodes or whoever plays that left guard position has to be ready to go because it's going to be attacked by this offensive line. Jake Thornton better have his offensive line ready to go. That offensive line is the the best and only defense, really, against our offense for LSU. They don't have the dudes back there. Those guys don't exist. Now, everybody back there is talented. They got talented guys on offense as well. This is LSU. This is 4 stars everywhere. I'm going to say, instead of 4 and 5 stars like Alabama, I'm going to say 4 stars everywhere because it's not the same level of talent as Alabama. But it's talented players. Now, will they show it? Who knows? Like Trey Palmer, number 33 on offense, has all the talent in the world to be a good player. He hasn't shown it at all. Every now and then he will flash. There's no consistency to his game. Any of his wide receivers, no consistencies in the game. Max Johnson's a really good quarterback. Tight ends are young. They've gone to a little bit of a youth movement on the outside. And like I said, Ty Davis-Price just runs really hard. And Florida could not figure out how to stop that counterplay. It is the most ridiculous thing. It just is. You pull the tackle on the guard from the other side, you block down for the other guys, and you send the tight end through with the lead blockers. I mean, it was the same thing over and over and over again. And it's probably going to cost Todd Grantham his job, honestly. Also, let's talk for just a second about Florida being worse over the last 10 games than LSU, with 2 losses to LSU. That's not good. That ain't good. And this is another example of a school trying to recreate what they had. Urban Meyer was a fantastic coach. Well, let's try and recreate what we had. So they went out and got Dan Mullen. But that era is past. That's kind of like Rich Rod. Not saying it doesn't work, just saying that most everybody does it now. That's the difference between now and 2007. It's what they do. It's just a baked-in part of their offense. Okay. Now, Matt Corral. We're going to talk about this. He has a potential to be the GOAT before he leaves Ole Miss. The greatest of all-time quarterback. I will hear no different. Just unbelievably great player. But there's a narrative developing, and we can trust this as fact because they did this when Eli left as well. And there's a segment of people that need to, denigrate the other players because they can't believe this player is that good. And I push back against that. And Tay Biddle and Mike Espy and Chris Collins were good wide receivers. But the narrative is 20 years later, it was Eli and a bunch of guys. And that's a horrible thing. And it's starting to happen with Matt Corral. It's Matt Corral and a bunch of dudes. Matt Corral and a bunch of guys. And I don't like that narrative. I push back against that. Some good players. We're practically have been over the last 10 years wide receiver U. Jonathan Mingo was a 4-star. Braylon Sanders actually, as a runner, he showed up, but he was a late 3-star. But there's 4 stars all over the field in that wide receiver unit. So tune out, do whatever you need to do, people that want to take this narrative of Matt Corral as doing all of this by himself. He did this against Tennessee because Ja'Cory Pearson had a nightmare of a game. And the only other avenue to attack the middle of the field was the quarterback draw. So that's why that happened. And Tennessee was stubborn with taking away the outside. They were just absolutely stubborn. And that just opened. There was a box count of 5 or 6 v6, and all of a sudden it was open because the safeties were on the outside. They were essentially doubling the outside receivers. And because of that, there was all this space, and you would be a fool not to take it. Nobody plans on running the quarterback that much. But whenever you're faced with a defense like that, you might as well. Because that's a surefire, almost easy route to success. And Tennessee knew, honestly, give them credit. They knew that if they came out to try and take that away, the rest of the offense would open up. And once the rest of the offense opened up, Tennessee was done. So they've decided to make two beat them. With the receivers being out the way they were going to make two beat them. It's a brave thing that they did. And it's absolutely crazy that they attempted to do that. But that is what they tried to do. They wanted the best person in college football, best player, to beat them. And he did. Because he's the best player in college football. Now, we got press conferences highlights coming up in just a second. Dennis Jackson, Jake Springer, and Lane Kiffin. And I think we're going to do a little bit, if we have time, we're going to do a little bit of Ed Orgeron story time. We're going to blow through this break just so we can do this. I think it's about 4 or 5 minutes going through. So we'll be right back to talk a little bit more whenever it comes back. Stick around.
Recap of the game. Obviously happy that we won the game, very much like the week before. Think we left a lot of things out there, especially in the second half. We weathered a very difficult place to play, with, as much energy as I've ever been a part of. So kind of felt at one point it was like a scene from Gladiator, the movie in a Roman Coliseum. So I know our players kind of felt that and, did some things early that were unusual that happen in that type of environment a lot of times. It's a lot of stress that they put on us. And we were able to overcome that and hang on at the end. Very high play count game. We had offensive players play over 100 plays in the game. So we were already extremely beat up. We are not in good shape that way for this week. But it is what it is. People from somewhere got to step up.
During practice, I'd be down doing conditioning and any like DB footwork and breaks and stuff like that, just to keep my legs ready and conditioned. And they had me on the same type of track that our guys was doing, like on the GPS for practice and stuff. So they tried to keep me on the same type of schedule as far as working out and conditioning and stuff like that. And they did a great job. I came back fresh legs and feeling good. So,
I believe I already had confidence in myself, but once I made that play, that just shows me that it can be done. And I just need to go do it again every opportunity I get.
Well, that's not a real stat that I'm excited about. I didn't know that in 14 years. We'd like that to be a running back and not our 200-pound quarterback. So he's not in very good shape. Hasn't been for the last 2 days. So you guys know how we are on injuries. Hopefully he'll play, but I do not feel good about that right now.
Just help as much as I can wherever I need to. Be versatile. Everyone in our safeties room is versatile. Play a whole lot of different positions. So whenever our number's called, just step up and make a play if it comes to us. So
I feel like I can play both, but like right now, obviously I'm on the outside. But like if they ever told me to go to the slot, I'll be fine with that. Do it.
Yeah, I don't know the details, of all that stuff and what went on. Obviously, Ed, did a great job there. Won a national championship. So I'm not really sure what happened here as of late. And it's crazy, they just beat a really good Florida team, when I'm sure not a lot of people gave them a chance, after the Kentucky game. So, it shows that they have great players and they can play really well. And they did that. I think to finish that, this is just, it's a profession that we've always been in, but now more than ever, it is so much not just what have you done in the last year, it literally is what have you done Saturday. I just had this conversation with another head coach, just who's struggling a little bit, trying to motivate him. I just said, hey, every Sunday you're either a good or bad coach based off of that Saturday, and it switches. I mean, when I see a thing on SEC Network that I walk by, where someone's, talking bad about Saban, after the end game as a coach, it just shows you where we're at.
Yeah, there you go. The presser highlights of the day. I think a little bit of gamesmanship is being done by Lane Kiffin there with Matt Corral's injury, because Matt Corral appeared after the game Saturday night and appeared to be fine. Now, it could be a tough guy, not really telling what's going on, or it could have been something that popped up yesterday. Who knows? But I assume he is going to play. Now, I do believe that if he couldn't go, Luke Altmaier would be the guy. Luke Altmaier's taken every meaningful backup snap this year. There's no reason to think that he would not take that moving forward. But I don't think we're in a situation to where Matt Corral is not going to play. Also, Dennis Jackson, really proud of him for scoring a touchdown. He's a guy that I picked out from the beginning, whenever he signed, as somebody to watch. And it's been, for whatever reason, an adaptation is slow, and he's turned into a spring and fall camp type player and everything. Now he has a chance to shine. I think he has a chance once Matt develops a rapport with him. If Braylon can't go, I think Dennis is going to really stand out. I am curious about Jaden Jackson as well, playing on the other side. Dontario's starting out there. I hope he gets healthy. In the slot, I did think the funny thing is, my prediction was John Rice was going to have a day. And that was because I thought that Tennessee was going to play the defense they were going to play. Now, Ja'Cour Pearson ended up being the first guy, and he did not have a great game. Nothing against him, what's going on. He did not have a great game. So they kind of went away from that. The RPO game that they were willing to run, they kind of went away from that. And they brought Dontario in a couple of times to run that play, to keep the defense honest or whatever, but they just honestly lost all trust in the slot position in that game. You can tell by them moving Dontario. So that's John Rice and Ja'Cour. And that forced the quarterback draws to be run as a way to attack the middle of the field that was basically being given to this team. Now, that's what you need to remember about this team and about this offense. Whatever the defense gives you, they're willing to take. And they will take it over and over and over again. And outside receivers might seem to get forgotten on one game. And the next game, the slot receiver is basically a ghost receiver. The tight end could be used one game. It just doesn't matter. Whatever you're giving them, they will take. Matt's done a terrific job of that this season. So I'm pretty impressed by that. But that is the presser highlight segment of the show. I think a little story time is in order from my time 37 million years ago in Oxford. Working on staff, the Manning Center, I give them credit whenever they first designed the Manning Center. This is not the way it is now, but this is the way it was. I had an absolutely massive office. Just huge, with a huge storage area. It was obviously designed by Chris Johnson, who was the video guy under Cut whenever I got there. So it was obviously designed. He had a lot of input in that, and you could tell that by the size of our office. It was genuinely big. It was so big that they cut it in half, and it's still big. But it was really big back then. But it was also centrally located by the war room, which means all the traffic and everything that was going on, I could hear clearly. The insulation in those walls were not that great. Any conversation, I could just hear what was going on. It was right next to the break room, and there to the war room, and across the hall was the offensive staff room. So the first year that Ed Orgeron got hired, and it was one of his, I think might have been his first practice at Ole Miss. So it would have been the first practice of spring of 05, I believe that is. So the way it was all set is the training staff would just follow people around with, I call them water cows, and everybody called them cows, but it was essentially a cooler that they could drink of, and it had a thing to drink of that was just pushed around on a dolly. That's essentially what it was. So all of a sudden, I heard just this huge, just screaming match develop out in the hall. And I was in the military. I was used to hearing things like that. But, I mean, you could understand clearly one side and you couldn't the other. And that was kind of a Coach Orgeron argument. And he would get squeaky. And whenever he starts yelling, he gets real squeaky. And you were sitting there and listening to what was going on. And it's like, what is happening? And you'd hear, I'm probably not going to mention his name, but he was talking about defending why we were using the cows and sitting and going in there. And why it was going, and there's so many of them, and it just helped him with drinking and all this. Well, Coach O, the whole argument was he wanted water bottles over cows. He didn't like the way the cows worked. He wanted water bottles. And he spent the next hour yelling at this person about these water bottles and why it was good. And it got so bad, honestly. At this point, I was still a student. So, I mean, I was doing a lot of work in that building, but I was not a full-time guy at that point. But it got so bad, I just left. I just went home because, I mean, who has time for that kind of just ridiculousness going on? And that is the point where the management style is like, hey, this probably isn't going to work. And that was the first practice of Ed Orgeron at Ole Miss. And apparently, all of that stuff, everybody talks about how Ed changed, and that was a narrative, and everything was going on back then. Now all of a sudden stories are coming out that maybe he didn't. Which also reminded me, if you look at their recruiting class that won the 2019 national championship, other than Joe Burrow, which was a transfer quarterback, there was a bunch of guys that was going to go to LSU anyway. They were going to win the national championship if Les Miles was there or if anybody was there. So that management style just kind of came to the forefront. But it was a bad yelling. I've never heard somebody just dog cussed for an hour over water bottles versus water cows. And that happened like right outside the door. It was utterly ridiculous. That would have been after Joe Cullen fell asleep at a Subway. So, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope everybody had a good day. I will be back tomorrow, tonight. No Best of the West tonight. They're going to do it Thursday. I think Kevin has a charity thing that he has to do. Also Thursday, no POMcast Thursday. Because I got to go to the tumor doc and get my head checked out. And honestly, it shouldn't be any problem. Nothing's going on. But it's just a step for me to get the radiation that I need. So I got to do this. So anyway, so tomorrow at 10 o'clock, tune in for more POMcast. Tomorrow night, SEC After Dark. Thursday, Best of the West. Thursday, also Talking Ball with Bill Flowers will be on there. And Friday will be Biscuits and SEC's SEC preview. So I'm pretty excited about that as well. So thank you very much for tuning in. I'll give you guys about a minute back. And I hope everybody has a good day and tunes in tomorrow. So, howdy toddy.